You're an extreme athlete. You've done some of the world's toughest endurance events, clocking over 70,000 kilometers, racing everywhere all over the world. What goes through your mind during one of these events?
Um, for a start, yeah, it's called ultramarathons, these events, and I've done lots of expeditions as well. But I think you've got to have some mental disorders to get started into this world. So you've got some mental issues, and I think when I was young, I was definitely running away from some of my own demons, if you like, and I found peace in pushing my body to the extreme, and I sort of grew up in a family where being physically tough was what was valued, So I grew up with a dad who was a real hard man, a good man, but a hard man. And so he expected a lot. And so I ended up in this world of ultramarathon running after a very, circuitous route. But and the funny thing is, Dr. Rob, is I had no talent whatsoever to be a runner. But I was very, very determined. And ultramarathons are really it's not so much about your athletic ability as your ability to endure, to suffer, to have a goal, a huge, take on massive challenges and scare the heck out of yourself and still keep going. So there's been lots of wins out of doing this type of sport, or lots of learnings, if you like. And when you're actually in the event, it's about trying to control your own mind, because your mind is telling you every second to stop, right? Stop, just everything's hurting. Why are you doing this? What's the point? No one cares. All of those sorts of things that go through your mind. But when you set your mind to something, you can achieve it. And so you learn to try to push through boundary after boundary, and then you start to realize that, hey, I am actually able to do so much more than what I ever thought possible. When you train and you prepare and you do the hard work, then sometimes, and this has really helped stand me in good stead for everything that I do, in life, because you may look at something and think, oh my gosh, this is huge, I can't do it, this challenge that I have before me. But if you chunk it down and you put in the day-to-day grind of the hard work to get there, and you surround yourself with a team of people that can help you get there, then the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned. I've seen it in my own life over and over and over again, that when I just put one foot in front of the other, and that's what ultramarathoners really learn, is just, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but keep moving forward, whatever you're doing,
So the everyday person, you're trying to convey a great message to them that they should have that mind-body connection. As long as you're doing something towards a progression every day, keep going, don't quit. But the
Yep.
but the question that everyday person's going to ask you is, how did you train your mind to put all the distractions away?
Yeah, and this is a hard one, and you've got to pick your battles. I think you've got to pick your goals. Like sometimes I think at the moment I'm retired now from doing ultra marathons. And why? Well, I'm 55 years old. I did it for 25 years, so that's one reason. And I also worked out that from a longevity perspective, this probably wasn't the way to stay alive forever. And if I wanted to have optimal health, then I probably needed to change up what I was doing. So from that perspective, but I think, picking your battles of what is important to you. And if you find that a goal that you really want to do, and that is your sole thing that you're after, then understand the sacrifice that it's going to take. When you do, I was talking to one of my athletes yesterday, and she'd just run a marathon, and she was a little bit depressed after the marathon because she'd had this big goal and she'd achieved it, and now what, and I said to her, you need a rest first before you take on the next goal. And she's like, but don't I need to keep going? And no, your body needs a rest. Your mind needs a rest. You need to recover and reboot. And you also need to understand the sacrifice that you're going to be making, less time with your family, less time with your friends, less time in your business. All of these things have to be weighed up into that equation when you're taking on massive challenges. But if it meets that test and you decide to go for it, then it can be such a motivating driving force. I've done races, like I've done Badwater Ultramarathon in the USA, which is a very famous race through the middle of Death Valley over there, in your neck of the woods of the world. it's 135 miles, and it's, temperatures up to 57 degrees, which I think is 130 odd in Fahrenheit. And it is massive. So when you sign up for something like that, and you've been chosen to do it, and you've been selected, you're going to get out of bed and do the training in the morning, because if you don't, you're going to pay a massive price. Like, if you don't prepare yourself properly, then you're going to be, caught wanting at the end of the day. So having a goal that you're publicly committed to, I think, is also a really important point. When you tell everybody you're doing this, you better be doing it. It does come hell or high water, rain, hail, shine, whatever it is, you better be out there training, because it's coming. That date's coming. So it's having that really specific goal can be a really big motivating factor.
It's interesting that what you said, that it's probably what you did with these extreme events, ultra marathons, that it wasn't great for longevity.
No.
But an interesting hack for longevity, I know you're all about longevity, is hormesis. And that's the body's response to stress. So there's hot stress and there's cold stress. So for instance, after a workout, I go in and I sauna, I want about 160 degrees, 140 to 160, which isn't all that much heavier than you just indicated where you were running. And then, of course, you want to cool down in a 50 to 59 degree shower. You can't do ice at 50 to 59, obviously. So what's interesting is, and I think it would be a great discussion, and I was looking to see if there were any studies, the amount of time that's optimal for us as humans to be under hormesis to really continually benefit, versus where that deleterious slope may come in. So I agree with what you're saying. It's probably not the best thing, the ultra marathon and these endurance events.
Yeah.
But I do believe that it opens up the doorway for you to understand stressors to your body, the mind-body connection community. And in addition to that, your diet had to be picturesque.
Well,
So
to be honest, like at the beginning, it wasn't. When I was a young person doing this thing, I had no idea of nutrition. In fact, we were pioneers, really. We didn't even know what electrolyte tablets were at the beginning when I started. Because I'm 55. I'm just back in the dark ages now when I started. And so we sort of, made 100 mistakes along the way. And back in the day, it was all carbs, carbs, carbs. Like, athletes were told, eat lots and lots of carbs, and that was, for me, not the right thing to be doing, and one of the reasons I started running was to, control my weight. And I can tell you that running is not the best way to lose weight. Like, it isn't. I lose more weight and can control my weight more readily when I'm doing weight training, because with doing extremely long distance, you sometimes causing massive inflammation, which can cause you to hold weight and can cause you to have hormonal issues and so on and so forth. I mean, when you're doing it to the extreme that I did, at one point I ran 2,250 kilometers in 42 days, which was 52 marathons in 42 days. Running through New Zealand, raising money for cancer charities here. And I got fatter for my troubles, because I had completely ruined my HPA axis was out. I had massive, massive inflammation. My hormones were in the gutter. And I lost a lot of muscle. So I ended up having more fat mass and less muscle mass, So that's just a funny anecdote about that. But hormesis for me now, like it's so important that we are pushing our bodies all the time to the point where we cause the inflammation and then backing off a little bit. Because when we do that, we're upregulating all our things like PGC1 alpha, and we're getting mitochondrial biogenesis, and we're our FOXO3 genes, like these things that we're upregulating, which makes us stronger and makes us more able to take the pressures of life, when we're more resilient. Having pushed the boundaries of the other side, I know, the dangers. I know the inflammation. Like, if you would have taken I'm pretty sure if you'd taken my CRP after running 100 miles or 200 Ks or something, it would have been through the roof, you know. It wouldn't have been a healthy looking person. Kidneys are a problem now for me because I had rhabdomyolysis so many times and ended up, you know, with problems with my kidneys. So there are downsides to doing that sort of extreme things, and that needs to be taken a little bit into account, but I've been managed to able to repair most of that. And I think the learnings from it are now that I push myself pretty much every day doing something that is uncomfortable, but for shorter periods of time. And I do it according to my genetics. So I in my practice, I do a lot of genetic testing, and I know my own genetics. So I know that I'm actually an athlete that's more suited to shorter, sharper, high intensity workouts combined with lots of yoga and Pilates to calm my sort of very ADHD type A personality. And that's a really good combination for me, you know, whereas doing the, you know, running for 10 hours at a time, not so much. Not for my health. So having discovered all this later in life, you know, changed up my regime and managed to pull my own health back to a point now where, you know, I'm super fit now, but I can't go and run a 100 miler, but I'm fit in a different way and I'm a lot healthier for it. And I feel a lot better. You know, I don't have the inflammation. I don't have the pain. I don't have all of the things that I used to suffer from, because I do everything now geared towards lowering inflammation in the body and optimizing my health and taking them, you know, I'm a you know, absolutely obsessive with longevity and curing aging and or slowing aging as best I possibly can now. And that's what I do for a living now.
And you do it well. That's kind of how we paths crossed, even though we're in two
Yeah.
vastly different continents. You made a lot of good points that I want to unbox. First is you talked about carbohydrates as your source of energy, and we know that carbohydrates are sources of inflammation,
Mm,
and fat would
absolutely.
have been, or ketogenic diet, a much better source of energy for a myriad of reasons. Number one, you only have about 2,000 calories stored of carbohydrates in your body. You got about 40,000 calories stored. Look at the extreme sports, extreme endurance sports. You're going to blow through those carbs and you're going to get to muscle. You're going to be eating yourself alive. You're going to be manifesting yourself. So clearly, to everybody, let's be straight. We do like the keto diet for certain things, but one thing in particular is extreme endurance sports. It just so happens that the keto diet's also been positive for power sports. But within that, let's get back to the endurance sport. You have all this stored energy, plus the fact that the fat, if you consume it, uncouples the mitochondria and it really produces more ATP than carbohydrates. So now you've got a pleiotropic effect on the body. The other thing that you said beautifully was inflammation. And I always say my credo is to manage and modulate inflammation. Too much
Absolutely.
inflammation or uncontrolled inflammation leads you down that slippery slope of damage to the body. So it would be fair to say that you would really have to be an expert in managing inflammation for somebody who did the amount of endurance type of work that you did. And, you
Yep.
know, let's go. I mean, all the stars and then the sun's rising. We're talking about longevity. You're talking about longevity and aging. But I think you touched upon something that we should really discuss a little bit more in detail, the idea of longevity performance. So we all know that longevity is lifespan and
Yep.
health span, how long we
Mhm.
live, and health span is how healthy we are with chronic disease. But what about vitality? But i.e.,
Yep.
what about performance? I mean, you keep
Yep.
mentioning your age, you're 55, I'm 58. You know, there's certain things that I can't do because I was fit at 25, but there's a lot of things that I can still do at 58 that my counterparts can't because they've unfortunately fallen to chronic disease or musculoskeletal faults, etc. So, I mean, we really need to bluster a lot about the concept of longevity. And lastly,
Yeah.
genetic testing. You mentioned it. You opened Pandora's box. Not a problem. What tests do you think everybody should test for? Where are you going with that? And
So I yeah,
fuck is yours now.
I I love genetics. I think they've changed my life personally, my family's life, and it's like getting the user manual for your own body, isn't it? It's like being given the keys, like, why did nobody tell me this when I was 20? You know, why did I not know that, you know, what time I should be going to bed and how often I should eat and what my sleep, you know, what my immune system, what my cardiovascular system risks are, you know, all of these things that are now, I have this knowledge. I use a company called the DNA Company, mostly up in Toronto in Canada. Dr. Mansour Mohammed was the founder of this company, and Kashif Khan. And this has been game changing in my practice as well, working with my clients, because you know, I can look at their risk, or for example, your hormones. You know, how do you process your hormones out of your body? You know, or your cardiovascular risk factors. Like, for example, I've got a gene called the 9p21 gene that I've got a 6G variant, which means that I have a terrible quality of the lining of my blood vessels, which means that I'm much more prone to stroke and aneurysm, which runs rife in my family. And so knowing that means I've got to keep my inflammation down. So that was, for me, as soon as I learned that was the end of ultramarathoning career, really, because it was like, I am not going to risk having a heart attack or a stroke because I've inflamed the linings of my body, because I pushed myself to the absolute limit. And by the same token, it also means that I've had to have, you know, the right oils and the right foods and the right things. But for me, one of the main risk factors was going to be the fact that I have this very poor quality, and so of the linings of my vessels. So that sort of information for me is not scary; it's empowering. It's showing me how to avoid something that some of my family members have unfortunately, you know, fallen prey to, and I don't need to, because I am aware of it now. That type of thing, you know, there's just so much power with it. And longevity in performance, you talked about performance. For me, you know, like maintaining this extremely high level of performance as I get older is so important to me. I don't want to decline neurologically. I don't want to decline in my body. I've worked so hard to get where I am, to have the knowledge that I have, the experience, the wisdom, if you want to call it. Should I now start to decline? Should I now start to age and just disappear off the planet in a few years? What a waste, you know. And we got to look at our people that are in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s as our source of wisdom. You know, these are the people that have years of experience. To lose that wisdom is to lose so much out of society. And wouldn't it be fabulous if we all lived another 20, 30, 40 years longer with that knowledge? What sort of problems could we solve, you know, if we just hung around a little bit longer? And I think we're perfectly capable of doing that. I mean, like I said, I'm 55 years old. You know, I can still do everything that I used to do. I can still do the splits. I can still do headstands. I can still, you know, like do all the things that you used to do as a kid. And I maintain those things every single day, because I know that if I stop doing those for a while, I'm liable to lose them. And so maintaining and consistency with what you're doing and your protocols is really, really important. I mean, periods of rest, don't get me wrong, that you should train constantly. You need periods of rest, but consistency in what you do and just not letting it go. I've had a situation where 8 years ago, my mum had a massive aneurysm and a stroke at the age of 74. And this turned my world upside down. And she was left, well, she was very lucky to survive it. Amazing doctors that saved her life. But then she was left in this baby-like state, unable to do anything, like not much over a vegetative state. No, had a couple of words, but no idea who she was, what she was, where she was in space. She had no vestibular system, was unable to do anything. And the doctors were like, there's nothing much we can do. There's just such massive brain damage. And I just absolutely flatly refused to believe that, and thought, well, people have always told me I can't run across the Sahara, or I can't run across the Himalayas, or I can't do this. They were wrong then. Why are they not wrong now? I'm going to find people who will tell me how to take the next step. And so I went on the search in the world for incredible doctors, scientists at the cutting edge of research. And I haven't come out of that. I'm now 8 years later, and it's what I do for a living now. But it took me 2.5 years to rehabilitate her from this very, very massively brain damaged state at the age of 74, mind you, to getting her back to full capacity, full driver's license, full walking 4 or 5 Ks a day, going to the gym, 5 times a week, living her life again and being fully able again. And I wrote a book about this, actually. It's called, for anyone watching, it's called Relentless, and that's my beautiful mum there. It was a book about really this a family's journey to fight for a loved one who basically had been told there is no hope, and how wrong that was. And it was huge sacrifices. Like I've spent the last 8 years working with her every single day for hours on end to get her back. But we did it, and this, I want to empower other people to not just accept that, oh, aging is just inevitable. You can't reverse aging. Oh, you've got Alzheimer's disease. Oh, well, you've got this ahead of you. This is your decline. This is where you're going. No, there is so much out in the world if you go and look for it. And it's doctors like you, Dr. Rob, that are, paving the way for people and showing the lights on the incredible longevity science that there is now, and on the things that we can do to be proactive and preventative in our approach, and not like I had to be with my mum, reactive. It's much harder to get someone back. It's much harder than if I had known what I know now, and I could have prevented her from having that aneurysm. She was very overweight. She was diabetic without being diagnosed. She was all of these things. All of these signals were there. We just didn't know to look for them, right? And I didn't know at that time what to do. Now I do. And now I work with lots of people in those sorts of situations and try to get people, we're all dying of aging. We are all having one fuse or another that's going to blow up in our faces if we don't look under the hood and see what's happening and be in that preventative mindset, and then be proactive and positive about it, because there is exciting things coming just around the corner as well. So my credo is, if I can hold my stuff together now, the great wonders and scientists and doctors around the world are going to have so many solutions for us in the next 10 years that I'll be able to live decades longer. That's my approach. So what do I do now? I do all the things now that I can do to maintain my health and maintain my mum's health, with mum, and I'll let you come to word in a sec, but my mum, after all getting her back and going through this whole journey with her, 3 years ago, or just under 3 years ago, we were hit with a terminal cancer diagnosis with a CNS lymphoma, a very aggressive form of cancer in the brain. And she was given weeks to live and no options. There was nothing that they could do. She was then 80 years old, and they said, chemo would kill her, and this would be, all the standard sort of things were not an option. So I went back to the table and I started to study the metabolic approach to cancer, and I started to interview doctors and scientists in the world of cancer. And I put together, alongside, I had a team of 15 doctors working on a case, international team of doctors that I put together. Cost a fortune, of course, but I absolutely dedicated everything I could to saving her life again. It took us 12 weeks to get rid of the tumors on the MRI. She's been now free of the cancer for just 2.5 years, just coming up 3 soon. She is amazing. She's a miracle woman. We have other issues we've dealt with along the way, and she's a little bit more frail than she used to be, but she is still going forward, still positive, still enjoying her grandchildren, and still fighting, and I never let the foot off the accelerator, because I know that cancer can come back, and I know that other things could happen, and I'm constantly living and learning so that I can do my best to give her the optimal life that I can give her for as long as I can give that to her. And she's my driving force behind everything that I do, really, and she's a role model to so many people. She's got a bigger following on Instagram, I think, than, when I put something up, nobody cares. But when my mum puts something up, it's And it's a story of resilience, and it's a story of fighting and love and family and all of those sorts of things. But it's a understanding that none of what I did was offered locally, none of it. Everything from the hyperbaric oxygen to the keto diet to the peptides to the off-label drug combinations to the supplements, nothing was offered as standard of care. And that's, to me, is a tragedy, and that's why I share a lot. I've actually released a book saying called "What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You," and it's interviews basically with some of the luminaries in the field of the metabolic approach to cancer and and adjunct therapies as well. So it's been a powerful journey, and we're still in it, and we're still fighting. And we're still here to tell the tale. And now I work in that field a little bit too with people with cancer and just trying to make them aware of both sides of the coin. We need both sides. We need, and I think this is very important too, that we don't, that we have functional medicine and integrated doctors alongside oncologists, alongside things, that we learn to communicate a little bit better would be great. And to share more knowledge.
Well, again, there's a lot to now unpack there. But it's very compelling. And it's funny that, we're very fortunate. We get to meet so many people, whether in person or on a podcast, and we get to learn from each other. But I think maybe more importantly than what we learn factually is we get inspired. We realize that life it's exhilarating. I saw a friend of mine, and not to go off on a tangent, we both grew up in the Bronx, and he's an Oxford grad. And we're sitting in a beautiful restaurant in Manhattan, and he looked at me and he gave me a smile. And I was just like, yeah, what? And he's like, isn't it great every day just learning one more thing, figuring this thing out of life, and maybe passing that on to somebody else? So you got inspired because your mom, and that's great. And you saved her. So that's even, even higher level of happiness. But I think you made a couple of really good points. You talked about let's be proactive and not reactive. The great JFK once said it is better to fix the roof when it's sunny than when it's raining.
I love that. The 36 holes analogy. I've heard you say that on a number of your lectures, and I'm like, yes, that is exactly the point that I try to get across to people.
And
don't wait till it's raining.
You guys where you are in New Zealand, Australia, do a much better job than where we are in America. I believe that the two problems that we have is sometimes two people disagree with each other vehemently in America, and we do it on TV so everybody sees it. But maybe the bigger underlying problem is that we have sick care here and we don't have health care. And we've got great doctors. But I think, like you said, they need to add to their cadre a functional medicine doc who's saying, well, what's the cause? What's the cause? Root cause resolution, not symptoms, looking at systems, but getting the root cause. And more so than that, that root cause is probably lifestyle based in failure. So you and I agree, exercise, eat proper foods, individualized for you, because you're going to need something different than I am not an ultramarathoner. Forget it. Anything that takes more than a couple of halves and, I can't bounce or run with, I'm not using, I'm not playing. It's just welcome to America. Football, yeah, score the ball. Basketball, yeah, dunk the ball. We're standing there running and getting inside your head. That for me, that would be unleashing the devil. But lifestyle, great choice. But on a serious note, peptides. You and I both use peptides. Now, I understand that you just started to carry peptides where you are in New Zealand. So let's talk about peptides. Say, why don't you tell everybody what a peptide is, how it's different than a protein, and the peptides that you like, and we'll
I mean, I'm a big fan of peptides, and actually one of the disadvantages of living in New Zealand is we don't get access to a lot of these things very easily. And so to get peptides into New Zealand, I do manage it on occasion, but it's quite difficult, and we have, problems getting them in, and I have to get doctors overseas to prescribe them and so on and so forth. And it can be a very long, difficult journey for us to get them because nobody here is actually doing it. And I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to make that happen. But meanwhile, we also have orally available now peptides, and you put me onto a wonderful guy who I just had on my podcast, Pushing the Limits, last week, Michael Antonelli, shout out to Michael, with some orally bioavailable peptides. And so I was super excited when I heard you talk about this, and like I was like, right, I've got to meet this person and get this products down here. And we do now. So peptides, basically, for those listening, and Dr. Rob, you're much more of an expert on peptides than I am, but the small chains of amino acids. So usually between, I think it's 2 and 10 amino acids, up to 40. I think above 49, it's considered a protein, isn't it? And then you've got the bioregulator peptides, which I also use from. That's from the work of Professor Kavinson out of Russia. Are you aware of those ones? Yep. So I use those because they're orally available as well. We can get those, and those are really short chains. And then you've got the injectables that are usually somewhere between 10 and 49 amino acids long. And these are like getting the instruction manuals back to, or the instructions for your DNA to produce certain proteins and to do certain things. So it's like giving yourself back what you had as a young person. And it's natural, and there are very few side effects. There are some side effects with some of them, but there are very few side effects, and they're safe. Like this is the fabulous thing with them. And they're not forcing a pathway. They often modulating the body and modulating the pathways instead of forcing different pathways. And so I like things that modulate rather than force one particular pathway. Like if you take a blood pressure medication, then you're just going to push the blood pressure down. If you give that to a person who has low blood pressure, they're still going to go down. Whereas if you are using peptides, they're very often, not always, but are very often a modulatory effect. I mean, things like BPC 157, I think, for both for digestive issues, and that is orally available. I've used that with my mum extensively with her gut issues that she's had. Amazing healing peptide. Also subcutaneously, and that's very, very beneficial for healing of wounds and just a body protective compound, and it does a lot of healing. Another one of my favorites is thymosin alpha-1, and that is a very good immune system modulating peptide. Thymosin beta-4, another one. And in your immune system, I mean, you're the master of the immune. I shouldn't be talking about immune systems because you've got immune reboot, but we want a strong, powerful immune system, because at the core of all of our aging is the immune system. If we're going to, surveillance of cancer, of all of these things, comes down to the fact of how good is your immune system working. And I think a lot of people don't quite get that connection. And I have a longevity supplement company that I've started here down in New Zealand called Avum Labs, and we are focusing our story around the immunosenescence story. So we're going after immunosenescence. We're targeting with our first products that will be coming on to the American market, actually, hopefully in the next 6 months. Anything that the products are going to be aimed at improving the immune system. So all of the things that start to go awry as you get older, thymic involution and increases in your CD8 and CD4s and, all those memory and naive T cells and the combinations that all get mucked up, the cytokines that are upregulated, and then the good cytokines that are downregulated. All these things are part of that immune system story. So we really need to be, I think, focusing in on the immune system at the basis of all the hallmarks of aging. I think it affects so many of them, put it that way, that it's a really core piece of it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I believe that longevity is turning on the health switches, but the master switch is having a robust, resilient immune system.
Mm-hmm.
In addition,
Amen.
a great medical adjuvant to having a strong immune system is utilizing BPC 157. It's
Exactly.
called the Wolverine supplement because, like the comic book character Wolverine, you heal before your eyes. Comes from gastric juice. It was found in 1993. So I've seen no downside to utilizing BPC 157 with many of my regular patients, my, pseudo athletic patients, and even in a professional setting, as long as it's allowed. so interesting that we talk about peptides. Everything's always mimicking a part of the body or a food. This one, BPC 157, is extracted from gastric juice, and they found it in 1993. So if you have
Amazing,
the
isn't it?
opportunity and you use the TB4, you put those together, it's the Wolverine stack or it's the peptide
Exactly.
stack. You get those together. That's a great choice. And a lot of the males who have been taking it where we live here have really been recovering from their exercise more efficiently. And that's a critical element. In addition, not breaking down is also great, because you and I talked about, listen,
Yeah.
happy where we are. We just don't want to go further. And by the way, let me circle back to something. They say middle age was 40. That's when my dad was growing up. I want to believe that middle age starts at 60, because my goal
Yeah.
is to live to 120. I don't want to sound like everybody else, but I prefer to die of hypervitaminosis. So I'm going to push the envelope when it comes to that. But
Love it.
to come
That is
full
so good.
circle to you, you know, I know you're into the longevity space. You've talked about a lot of the developments happening now. What do your daily protocols include? What do you do?
So, yeah, good question. So as soon as my eyes open, basically I do a little bit of an assessment. I look, check my sleep stats on, I use a sleep app, and see how the quality of my sleep is, what my heart rate's doing, what my blood pressure's doing. If my heart rate's elevated, I might take a day off training, that type of thing. And if my HRV is out, I'm sort of gauging where I'm at that day in regards to what sort of a level of performance I'm going to bring that day. Like if my HRV is in the gutter, then I'm going to probably go easy today, if I can talk myself into that, because that doesn't always work. And then I usually get up and I do like the Wim Hof breathing, the 30 hyperventilating, and then holding your breath. So a little bit of hypoxia, a little bit of hyperoxia, so that you're creating a cortisol response. Then I try and get to having a cold shower. So I have a warm shower first, and then I have a cold shower for as long as I can stand it. And while I'm just after I've done the breath work, and then I usually get outside if I can, unless I'm really busy. I try and get actual sunshine on my eyes and get outside, and in order to wake my body up, to get that cortisol. So I'm looking for that cortisol spike in the morning. And I've, lived a very stressful life. And so my adrenal system is a little bit fried, for the want of a better description. My HPA axis doesn't always work, perfectly. So I make sure that I get that early morning sunshine on the eyes so that I can get that cortisol release. So that's the beginning of my day. And then I go and put my cocktail of supplements, peptides, green smoothies, things like that together, depending on whether I'm intermittent fasting. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. At the moment, I'm doing a big green smoothie in the morning, again, supporting my adrenals, because my adrenals are a little bit fried after having mum close to death a few times in the last couple of months. So I'm not intermittent fasting at the moment, because my adrenal system is under heavy load. And this is like the nuance of that conversation around intermittent fasting. It's not for everybody all the time. And as right for me right now, but what I do have for my breakfast is just straight vegetables and a whole lot of supplements. I do take a lot of supplements, and I also have my peptides, and that sort of is the beginning of my day. And then I'm off into work, and then as soon as I can, I'm usually, like, my day sort of revolves around work and my mum. So I have to take my mum training every day, take her out, have social interactions. I try to give her the best quality of life. Now that takes a massive chunk out of my day. So I have to work very late at night often to sort of counteract that. So I have to manage myself throughout the day. We do our training usually in the morning. Mum and I will head to the gym and we'll do a workout there, or we'll go to the park and do her workout, and then I'll do my workout afterwards. And typically I only get 45 minutes a day to do my workouts now, because of the constraints of my existence, if you like, with my businesses and my mum. And so I typically go hard. It's a hard, high intensity workout. And then at nighttime, when I'm powering down, that's when I'll do my yoga, my breath work, to calm my system down. I think it's very, very important for me, as a very high stressy person, is to do that breath work, the yoga, the Pilates, all of those things that are going to stimulate that vagal, that parasympathetic tone at nighttime to bring me down a notch. Because especially if I've been working on the computer and I've been researching or I've been doing something or preparing quite late into the night, I do need that half an hour to come back down, and sort of recalibrate. So my nighttime routine is also very strict. I have blue light blocking glasses. I try to relax and do all that sort of thing at nighttime. A little bit of yoga I find helps get me into the zone. Then I have my night supplements, things that help me sleep, and a full sort of a regime. And then I sleep beautifully usually. I do have to get up in the night to my mum 2 or 3 times. So it's a and this is the life that a lot of people lead. We're looking after children, we're looking after elderly parents, we're trying to run businesses, and so we can't always lower our stress levels that are coming at us, but we can modulate and put in good inputs, high level food, high level quality supplements, doing these things that mean that I can perform at the level that I need to perform at. And manage me and my personality and everything. So I need a lot of movement throughout the day. So sometimes I'll just get up and sprint to the letterbox and back just to release a little bit of energy, in between meetings or whatever. So that's a sort of a typical day for me and how it looks. Quite regimented, quite routine, quite obsessive. I also have a hyperbaric clinic, so I have a hyperbaric if I can. I have an infrared sauna. I have a house full of biohacking gear. And people don't need to go to that level, but I love it. It's, for me, it's my saves me. It's my saving grace.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a scenario of an American adult, 3 kids, 2 jobs, busy as heck, maybe not access to all the tools that you and I have, the red laser, the sauna, the PEMF, the Normatec, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Give them 3 quick, easy hacks they can do to help them on a path of getting healthy and increasing their longevity.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1 is exercise. You have to commit to a certain amount of exercise. And I don't care whether that's like 5 minutes a day if you're starting from scratch, or 10 minutes a day, whatever you can manage, any sort of movement. If you're overweight, but you exercise, you'll live longer. If you smoke, but you exercise, you'll live longer. These are, not saying that you should smoke or be overweight, but what I'm saying is that the exercise is the most important piece. I can give you the perfect supplementation regimen, the perfect nutrition regimen. If you're not moving, you're not going to be living a long time. So that is, I think, commit to some level of movement. It doesn't have to be sport, it doesn't have to be training per se, but it does have to be at least, going for a walk or doing something, getting off the couch. I think that's really, really important. And then sleep. The sleep is the next biggest thing, the next thing that you need to tackle. And again, there's a genetic factors here, whether you have good sleep genes or you don't have good sleep genes, but there are also things that you can do. So don't watch a horror movie just before you go to bed. Don't open your emails get nasty messages from your boss at 10 o'clock at night. That's going to spike your cortisol. Trying to avoid high carb foods 3 hours before bed, because that's going to wake you up in the middle of the night as your blood sugar drops and your cortisol levels go up. Taking things like, magnesium threonate, I love to take at nighttime to help calm that brain. Sometimes melatonin can be a really powerful thing if it's, appropriate for you. There's a whole lot of supplements and things that we could talk about there, but optimizing your sleep. So getting that circadian rhythm piece with the light in the morning, getting the cortisol response. I do encourage people to maybe do even a 24-hour cortisol or a cortisol awakening response, or cortisol testing if you can possibly do it, so that are you mounting a good cortisol response? Are you following the appropriate curve during the day? Have you got low cortisol at night? If you don't, then you've got work to do. And there are lots of things we can do, but you have to know that you have the problem. So for me, light, if we go back to the caveman days, and, Andrew Huberman talks about this a lot, getting that sunlight on the eyes early in the morning to get that cortisol response. If you can see a sunset at night, or that quality of light at night and be outside and watch the sun go down. I mean, I'm lucky enough to live at the beach, so I can watch the sun go down over the horizon. That's gold, because that tells my brain it's time to start to power down. Dimming the lights in the house, not having a lot of blue light exposure. And if you are on the computer, wearing blue light blocking glasses, getting software like the Flux software that can block some of the blue light, doing what we can so that we can still live in our modern world, but recognizing our ancient history and where we came from. I think, you know, our evolutionary selves, that's important. So those are the couple of things. Exercise and sleep, I think, would be the two key factors there. Basics, basically. The basics, but yeah.
Great takeaways. So to reiterate, exercise. New study came out that exercise as a longevity hack is 6,000 steps. So however you want to get them, even if you get them at work, 6,000 steps. Sleep, great rejuvenative act. Great for immune rejuvenation. Some of the supplements you mentioned, magnesium L3 and 8, melatonin, L-theanine also, because
I love L-theanine. Yep.
Cross the blood-brain barrier. And I'm going to give a new longevity hack, fiber. Robust studies have shown that in addition to fiber, have decreased mortality dramatically. Fiber helps to produce more postbiotics. So if you take fiber with probiotics, you're going to have a postbiotics. We now know the prebiotic fiber is more important than the probiotic. In that,
yep, totally agree.
Definitely a new longevity hack. All that tied up.
Yep.
Give everybody the one thing before I know you're busy, the one thing that everybody should do differently than they do today. Just one thing. I know we got it to 3, but give them one. We're in America.
Out of those three or new one?
Anything you want. Just say, hey, tomorrow, you know, like my friend and I, we winked at each other. If we learn one thing, we know today was a good day, and tomorrow we're going to be stronger, better, and share more. What's the one thing?
I think, you know, like gratitude, if we put the sleep and things those to the side, I think remembering to be grateful for the things you do have. And we tend to focus on the things we don't have and we haven't achieved. And especially like people like you and I who are always on a mission, right? Always going somewhere. We do have to sometimes sit down like with your friend and go, look where we came from, look what we did, look at this lovely day we've had. And, you know, sometimes just stopping to smell the roses, you know, like see the flowers, see the birds, see the beauty around you, because it's so easy in this day and age to be tied up in all the horrors of our world, of which there are many, and to bring it back into the present and to stay in that moment and, you know, give somebody that you love a hug, or if you don't have anybody, if you've got a cat, hug the cat, you know, or the dog. Find somebody to have a connection with if you possibly can. And I think that's, you know, part of the problem in the society, and our older people often don't have that connection. And I'd like to see that change, that we embrace our older people back into society more, and we treasure our elderly population more. They've got so much to share with us, you know, and we need them around, you know, rather than, you know, in my culture, our elders are considered our wisdom, you know, and treated as such. And I would like to see that, you know, happen more as well. So yeah, a couple of things there.
Outstanding. Well, it's been my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much for taking time from where you are. What time is it there?
It's 9 o'clock in the morning.
9 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the afternoon. I'm finishing up with my last cup of coffee. Segueing into tea. You can still have some more coffee. It's been my pleasure. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'd love people to reach out. My website is lisatamati.com. That's Tamati. I have a podcast who Dr. Rob has been on, and he's going to be on again next week or the week after, talking longevity, your wisdom. That's called Pushing the Limits. And I also have a number of books and things. Mum's book, Relentless, as well as a lot of running adventure books, Running Hot and Running to Extremes, that I've released as well. So lisatamati.com is the best place. That's the hub sort of thing, or follow me on Instagram and all of that sort of good sort of jazz. That'd be awesome to connect. I love meeting people from other countries and hearing from listeners, so that'd be fabulous.
Outstanding. Well, it's been my pleasure. We'll see you soon. Proven Health Alternatives.